by Zeppos, the home for the Cougar Coaches Show, and by The Bookie. It's all here, it's all you, it's all WSU. Live from Zeppos, alongside Cougar head coach Mike Leach, here's the voice of the Cougars, Matt Chazanow.
It is that time of the week. It's great to be with you. We are live here at Zeppos. Coach is en route. And it is after a very eventful and strange bye week. And we will talk to Coach Leach about it and then talk about this Arizona State game. Not an easy one. Arizona State, ranked 18th in the country, is 4-1. They're 1-1 in the pack. Most recently, they won in Berkeley at Cal by one touchdown. They won 24-17. ASU has won in East Lansing at Michigan State. They won 10-7 in just a very low-scoring game. This is one of the best defensive teams in the Pac-12. They have a former freshman All-American cornerback in Chase Lucas. They have a regular starter, a longtime starter, a senior on the opposite side named Kobe Williams, who had actually at one point had 30 straight starts, which is just hard to accumulate on that boundary side there. And then his backup's actually a former USC starter that you may recall from the game a few years back. Jack Jones was a starter for the Trojans, and now he's there. And Herm Edwards is their head coach, and everybody knows Herm from ESPN for almost a decade. And he coached the Jets and coached the Chiefs. And I'm actually not sure if Coach Leach knows Herm Edwards. He seems to know everybody, but I don't know if he's crossed paths with Herm. So we'll talk to him about that. It's always fun to hear how the coaching route has wound around and if those two have ever crossed paths. They have a true freshman starting quarterback, which is very rare. They have two true freshman starters on their O-line, which is extremely rare. They have a true freshman left tackle and a true freshman right guard. It's gone okay. They've been okay. So we'll talk to Coach Leach about that, kind of what he sees on that side, which relates very directly, and I want to talk to Coach at great length. I know everybody wants to know and hear about the new co-interim defensive coordinators. How has practice been? Rock Bellantoni and Darcel McBath, two fantastic guys who are now plunged into this role unexpectedly and thrown into this. Rock has been a defensive coordinator and came to Washington State from the University at Buffalo. He was the DC prior, actually, where Pat Chun was the director of athletics at Florida Atlantic. They were there at the same time. When Pat was at FAU, Rock Bellantoni was their defensive coordinator. And right around that time, I think Darcel McBath was making tackles for the 49ers and the Denver Broncos. He's played 5 years in the NFL. And so we'll talk to Coach about how all that's gone. And we have had a bye week, so we've not talked and won't harp on, but have not had a chance to talk about the Utah game, the 38-13 final. We will relive it for a moment. We'll take a break. I have word that Coach is en route coming from Thursday Night Football. We are live here at Zeppos. It is another game week, and a big one it is. Cougs are 3-2 at Tempe coming up this week.
Cougs Utes.
Takes the snap, right hashes, has a good pocket, throws it slant over the middle, touchdown. 4-yard hookup. Gordon tosses to McIntosh. It's Deion McIntosh with his second Cougar touchdown this year. And an extra point pending to tie the ball game. 17 seconds left first quarter in the Cougars march. The snap is good. The hold is down, the kick end over end. It has the distance, but it is good. It is true, and Blake Mazza with a new career-long 51 yards with 12:25 left here in the second. Mazza boots it up. Snapback Huntley gives it here to Wilmore. He is stopped. He's pulled backwards. It's a loss of yardage on 4th and short. And Washington State's defense holds. Turns Utah over on downs. Clock frozen at 8:37 left in the half. The Cougars down 14-10. Take over on offense. Snap is high and put down well by Dragicevic. The kick is up and true. And there's a big kick. Every point will matter in this one. It's a tight ball game, 14-13 with 3:31 to play in the second. Snapback Huntley, 1st and 10 at the 15. He'll tuck and run to the right, 15-yard line, sprints to the 10, angles toward the 5 and dives in, touchdown. 15-yard scamper for Tyler Huntley with 22 seconds left in the half. And Utah is up 20-13 as Huntley uses his mobility. And that will do it. Zeros on the clock. A very tough ball game here in Salt Lake City. 38-13. The final score here. The Utes with the win here in Rice-Eccles.
More from Zeppos after this on the Washington State Sports Network from Learfield IMG College. focused on serving the people and businesses in Washington and all across the country since 1863. That's U.S. Bank, equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Back here live at Zeppo's. It is that time of the week. We got a great crowd here at Zeppo's as always. And Coach is en route. I believe he's right down the hill. He's just around the corner, I am told. There's so much meat on the bone this week. Every year as we get deeper into the year, there are more tangible stories. It's not just guesses and prognostication as to what will happen, but we can talk about what has happened. And, Rock Bellantoni has coached nearly 30 years of football. I mean, he's been doing this a long time. He actually played at Iona and UMass. So as an East Coast guy, played defensive tackle 1988 for UMass, and then he played for Iona till 2002, and got his bachelor's from Iona, graduated from Iona, and has been coaching since the 90s. 1998, he coached at Drake, went to Eastern Illinois. He was at Eastern Illinois for a long time. Eastern Illinois is actually where Jimmy Garoppolo played college football. So Eastern Illinois, he was there from 2001 to 2011. And then he was successful at Villanova, where he was a special teams coach and a D-line coach. Villanova is actually a very good FCS program on the East Coast. They've had Brian Westbrook and Brian Finneran and some really big-time NFL players. Then he was at Florida Atlantic, then a couple of years at Buffalo, and now here he is in the Pac-12 at Washington State. And he's a great guy to talk to. I had a chance in pregame a couple weeks ago to talk to Rock, and he's really fun to cross paths with. But on the record, even he's really candid and super affable. It is only his first year here, though. He was the linebackers coach, and it's his first year here. And then Darcel McBath comes here. This is his third year here. He actually was at North Texas to start, and in Denton, and he was the defensive quality control. He was on the staff as the defensive quality control guy in 2016, and then he came here in 2017. Last year was his first year as a coach. He was promoted to coach, and now, boom, this year he's the interim co-defensive coordinator. And what an incredible ascension for him. He was a really good player for Mike Leach in Lubbock. He was an all-Big 12, 2008 all-Big 12 first-team safety. So he was really one of the best safeties in the Big 12 in 2008. Had a great year. He was a second-round pick in the NFL. We're talking about a premier defensive player, drafted by the Broncos, played for Jacksonville, played on a Super Bowl team for the San Francisco 49ers, made a tackle in that Super Bowl, and had 5 years in the NFL, and is one of my favorite people. Everybody who runs into Darcel just loves Darcel, and it could not be more excited for the way that he connects to the guys, the way he will now be out and actively recruiting as coaches do as the co-interim DC in season. There's a different mandate there when you talk to a kid and say, you have this kind of authority and play calling and this sort of schematics. And I just think it's super exciting for Darcel as he has skyrocketed. Here's Coach Leach coming into Zeppo's this week's edition of the show. And so here we go, off to Tempe, Arizona, and the desert, where Arizona State and Herm Edwards will be for this Washington State post-bye week game. Mind you, also Arizona State's also off of bye week, and they come into this one, as I mentioned before, 4-1, and are 1-1 in the pack. They lost actually to Colorado 34-31. That was the final there. Coach, how you doing? How's everything going? How's practice today? How's Thursday night football?
It was good, I thought. Just out there trying to get better. I thought we had good work.
Let's get right to it. Rock Bellantoni, Darcel McBath, how has practice been this week? How much have you been able to see the defensive side of things? How's Rock been? How's Darcel been? How's it been?
Well, we've had better energy, I think, and I think that was important for us. And then because I think both Rock and Darcel, bring energy, and I think that it's elevated our players. I think it's elevated our coaches, which is something we needed.
How good was Darcel as a player? First team All Big 12, 2008, second round NFL draft pick, 5 years in the league. But you all that's on paper, and he had a lot of accolades. How good of a ball player was Darcel? What kind of player was he?
He was good. We didn't have enough positions to play him. I mean, because he'd get tired at some point. He played in at least one and maybe two Super Bowls. I can't remember if it was one or two. He might have played in one with Denver, but I can't remember. And then, but no, he could play all the special teams. He could play corner. He could play safety. And as big as he is, he was fast enough to play corner, and that's a little unusual. And so, yeah, he had the ability to do a lot of things.
He has a fantastic disposition and affability and personality, a big smile. And I would imagine you've witnessed him really connect to the kids. I mean, he's only been here, this is his third year, but he must have made an immediate connection, especially with the DBs, but the whole defense as well.
Well, he does, and not just that. He's not afraid to tell them what they need to hear either. So, I mean, Darcel's, and, he was, basically one of the team captains, things like that, called the secondary, and he wasn't afraid to do that as a player either. He was always very dedicated and very smart guy, very dedicated at improving as a player, and kind of expected the others around him to do the same.
So meanwhile, so Darcel will be down on the field, and then Coach Bellantoni, Rock Bellantoni, who, by the way, Rock Bellantoni, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, is the most East Coast football name in history. Rocco Bellantoni's fantastic. But
not a lot of that in Wyoming.
Right. He'll be up in the booth. He's newer to this staff. He's been here. This is his first year here as the linebackers coach. What has your conversation been like with Rock? What has the discussion been like in the logistics? He's up in the booth. Darcel on the field. How's it been like with Coach Bellantoni?
I think it should turn out quite well because, you got Rock, who's been a DC, so he's organized. It has all the organizational stuff going in. Do this then and that then, and as far as the processes and things. And then, of course, Darcel's had the experience with a number of defensive coordinators and some great ones. And then, I think together it's a pretty good combination. So Rock's up top, and then talks to Darcel, who's on the field. And so then, hopefully, it all. And it appears that it has been in practice. Rock thinks and sees, and then so does Darcel, and then they compare notes, and then Darcel ignites the group.
Not only is there this coaching switch, but there also were some pretty quick depth chart changes. Daniel Isom goes out to the boundary, Patton on at nickel, Skyler at safety. How has that been in practice? How have those guys looked?
It's been good. Those have been kind of brewing for a while, because we wanted to felt like we needed more depth at safety, and tried to develop some depth at both corner and safety, which I think we did, but in the meantime needed to really get some guys settled in. And then the other thing that I think's been important is to simplify some stuff. We've gone we had too many bells and whistles and gadgets, and that's the trouble with football is it's always tempting to, add something clever. The other guy does this, so let's try that, and that's why he's the other guy. That's because he does that. So, and that's the thing. If you sit there and add too much, you're going to drive yourself to mediocre or worse because you got to have an identity, otherwise you're just everybody else.
Is it a unique situation among the many parts of this that are unique? The changes that were made, Daniel Isom to the boundary, Skyler Thomas to safety, that's actually where those guys are probably most comfortable to begin with, right? It's almost like a change back to what these guys really do. Isom was a corner at Northern Illinois when he was recruited here.
Well, I think that's his best position, and then I think Skyler, when he's decisive and runs to the ball, that's what he does best.
Yeah, he can really fly when he makes his mind up to it. Meanwhile now, Jihad Woods, 47 tackles, has been extremely productive. Jihad's just been a staple there on that weak side linebacker spot, hasn't he?
Yes. He does a good job. The biggest thing is Jihad has to stay engaged. Sometimes he'll try to do too much, but he's got to trust other guys to do their job and then just do his full speed. But he is a very steady guy, and then the other thing is we need more guys to function like Jihad.
We've got questions rolling in on Twitter, M_Chaz. I think we're like 100%. None of them have anything to do with football. Not a single one of them. So we'll get to all that. We'll also have a bunch of write-in questions here at Zeppo's for the world's most refreshing beer. 21 means 21. Celebrate responsibly with Coors Light. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Cougs in Tempe at Arizona State. We'll take a break. Come back here live at Zeppo's next.
Last week, my wife
Interact with the show. Give us a call on the bookie call-in line at 866-COOG-TALK, 1-866-268-4825. Live from Zeppo's alongside Cougar head coach Mike Leach. Here's Matt Chazanow.
Back here live at Zeppo's. We are talking ball here with Coach Leach, talking all kinds of things. We will we'll deviate here from football for a little bit because if you ask a question, we will do our best to get it on. We've got tons of time, so here we go. Mary on Twitter, Coach, wants to know, and we will talk more football here, but we'll roll through these questions. Mary wants to know if you could cast any actor about your life, would you pick Will Ferrell, Tom Hanks, or John Goodman to be you in your bioepic Hollywood movie?
Shoot. I think probably Tom Hanks. But the reason is he can be anybody. You know, he's got the strange ability to be virtually anybody about when you think he can't. I suspect I probably have more in common with John Goodman, though.
Thank you, Mary, for that question. All great choices. Tom Hanks, great actor. Okay, yeah, this is football. Mark from Riverside, I believe, asks, with the recent hire, Hunter Dale is back on staff. Hunter was a nickelback last year, was a really good player for the Cougs the last almost half decade, and played prominently over the last couple seasons. What factors do you consider when selecting graduate assistants, and how great is it to have Hunter back in the mix, and what do you think he brings to the table?
Well, I think the first thing is you want somebody that wants to do it really bad and is willing to do it for free. Because if you don't want to do it bad enough to do it for free, you may not belong there. Well, because nearly everybody that's involved in college coaching has done it for free or nearly for free.
Like an internship
or a GA.
GA.
You know, yeah, fine. You got your, expenses covered somewhat, but then after that, you had to make some sacrifices and do it for free. I made $3,000 my first year, and I had a wife and my first daughter, so I made $3,000 for the year. And so they got to really want to do it, otherwise they're not going to stick because it's too demanding, too much time, they'll fold. And then and then you want somebody that's capable. And in Hunter's case, he was always, one of the voices for our defense and things like that, and very enthusiastic. And then, now he gets to go down the path of learning as much about defense as he can to develop the skills to, one day be a position coach. But he really wanted to. He was a very knowledgeable guy, did a good job getting others lined up, so I had a good sense of it. Was a student of the game as a player. One thing that people don't know about Hunter Dale is when Hunter Dale first got here, he wasn't in that great a shape. And Hunter Dale would get, I don't know if it got shipped to him or he just used his mom's recipes, but start with New Orleans, Louisiana, go to recipes, and a bunch of that mixed with Hunter Dale created a guy that wasn't in quite as good a shape as perhaps a safety needed to be.
Huh.
He was working toward O-line instead of safety. And then so between our workouts and our off-season workouts, Hunter Dale would go over there, and after a few months we found out, he would go over there to the rec center, and he would just double up workouts.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, he'd just do it twice.
I didn't know that.
And then eventually, over time, his body starts to transform because under the best of circumstances, Lascalzo at the time, his workouts were crazy demanding.
Yeah.
And so are Tyson's now. Well, then, Hunter's just going to go ahead and get two of them, or then on off days go and get them besides. So, it really was impressive. And he, literally in that period, about a year and a half, formulated himself into a player.
Yeah, the game that sticks out in my mind, and I may be missing one or two, maybe one comes to mind for you, but I think he led the team in tackles. I know he had double digits, and I know he had a tackle for loss, if not a couple, in Autzen, in Eugene, and it was one that really wasn't all that close, and he played great that game, and that was one that stuck out. He was kind of the leader in that ball game, at least by the box score production, and he was great. He really turned himself into a very productive Pac-12 player.
Well, and he was never afraid of anybody. Some of these guys end up reading the name of the school on the front or the mascot or whatever, and it can change the way they play or just their mentality. It didn't change with him. He didn't care. He didn't care what your logo said.
Love that. So Hunter is back. It struck Alex and I in the booth when he raised the flag when he was back with Nick Begg and Peyton Pellure and Gardner, and I may be missing a couple guys. There's a lot of cerebral football players, a lot of smart guys who were not on the field, who were raising the flag, and Hunter was one of those guys. Great to have him back in practice now, bouncing around. He was showing off. He said he had his coach thing down now. He had the pen in the skull cap, and he had the paper in the back of his pants there, and he felt like he was coach worthy. He was all ready now.
There's some guys that look like that, yeah, especially in Louisiana. So he's probably morphing it into some people that he had before he got here and some while he was here.
Great personality and great to have him back, and fun to see him now as a coach. Mark, thank you for that question and your participation. Ed Boyle, who's a frequent listener and tweeter to the show, wants to know if you like Mexican food. He mentions Tucson. I think he means Tempe. Do you like Mexican food? Do you have a Tempe spot that you hit up for Mexican Tex-Mex, anything like that?
Yeah, I like Mexican food a lot. I like authentic better than Tex-Mex. And then, I don't know, I just typically ask around. Yeah, there's some places. I haven't really been to a bad one.
What's the authentic versus Tex-Mex difference? Do you know what's the?
Well, they're less casserole. They first of all, corn shells, generally corn shells instead of flour shells, unless you have a burrito. And then carne asada a lot of times. And then, less likely to have stuff like queso and the stuff like that. It has all the good stuff and none of the less good stuff.
There you go. All right, Ed, thanks for that question. Daniel Hayes asks you, Coach, are you a fan of the Pirates of Caribbean, the movie series? Do you have a favorite?
Yes. The earlier ones were better. The one with The one with Keith Richards in it, that was a good one.
Brendan Smith says he's seeing Jimmy Buffett in Vegas next week. Do you have a favorite Buffett song? Are you a Jimmy Buffett guy?
Yeah, I like a bunch of his songs. Gypsies in the Palace is a great song. Pirates Look at 40 is a great song. Last Mango in Paris is a great song. There's a song that starts out, Why Don't We Get Drunk? That was a favorite in high school. And then, but yeah, you really can't go wrong. He's got this, there is, one that's outstanding. Buffett's got, and it's funny because I've actually met the Gypsies. You know, one guy's a stage manager, the other's a studio manager. Never met Jimmy Buffett before, but I've met the studio manager and the stage manager. And they were the Gypsies that the song was written about. But there's an album, and it's very folksy, and you kind of see how things started out and took off, called Before the Beach. I think it's called Before the Beach.
Uh-huh.
And it's all the stuff that he worked on early in his career, and, you know, when he was doing stuff with Jerry Jeff Walker, stuff like that. So anyways, it's really good, and I think that it kind of tells you how we got from point A to point B.
Yeah, there you go, Brendan. Thanks for that question. Thanks for listening. Katie Walsh wants to know if there's a place you would love to visit purely for historical significance, just for the history of it. Is there a spot you'd love to go to?
I've been there, but Charleston, I'd like to go to Charleston again, South Carolina. It's an outstanding place, and I would definitely like to go see that again.
Beautiful city. Scott M. Cougar. Scott would like to know, would you rather live, I'm not totally sure where this question will go, would you rather live in the ascendancy of a civilization or during its decline? Which is potentially profound, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the ascendancy would be more fun. Although, but and I've said this before, a lot like Paul Harvey says, tomorrow's always better than yesterday was. And even though he's kind of viewed as a nostalgic guy, he could go on and on about the innovations, the potential for mankind and stuff like that. So I do think that typically tomorrow is better than yesterday.
There you go. All right, Scott, thank you for that question. Thinking outside the box there. Let's talk a little bit of football here. We're going through some Twitter questions. I've got some write-ins here. After the Utah game, how do you think the team responded to the way, to some of the there's been so much going on. I'm going back to Utah. It feels like forever ago, but that is the last game played. How do you think the team's responded since the Utah game moving forward here, and how quickly did they kind of bounce back by week now into this week?
Well, I thought they bounced back fairly quickly. I guess we'll find out. I mean, we'll find out. But I did think as a staff, as a team, players, coaches, everybody together, I thought bounced back pretty good because we all felt like, we'd fallen short on what we were capable of. And then, some of the stuff as far as we prepared to practice later in the week and in some of the staff movements, things like that, were embraced with a lot of enthusiasm. So I think everybody's ready to get back to work.
Do you have these are, again, we're doing write-in questions here. Who's the biggest surprise player on the team this year? Do you have a surprise player on the team this year, playing above maybe where you thought they'd be circa Lewiston or maybe even further back to spring ball? Is there somebody who's kind of exceeded expectations?
Yeah, maybe, but I don't have anybody in particular. I think that we're still waiting to see on that. It's a little too early to say. We'll see how it winds up. And anytime you anoint these guys with anything, they all of a sudden go soft. So, so.
One of the, and now I don't mean to just pivot to pull players out here because that runs counter to what you just said, but One of the depth chart changes not in the secondary was for Dallas Hobbs. Dallas now with a starting nod. He had his first career sack against Utah. He's a big boy, 6'6", 285. He's put on a ton of weight. Dallas has worked pretty hard in his third year now here in the program, hasn't he?
Dallas has steadily improved, and Dallas plays a position and is the type of player that doesn't always measure on the stat sheet. Guys like Dallas that are in the interior there, can have a lot of benefit that don't necessarily end up on the stat sheet.
Right, he's taking up blocks. He's doing maybe multiple blockers, that sort of thing. There's no box score for that.
If he's double-teamed and he's got his hands up, then he's a big problem for them.
Yeah, he 4 tackles and 2 tackles for loss against Utah. That was super active. We are up against the break. We need to take it. We're live here at Zeppo's. We're talking ball here with Coach Lee, talking all kinds of things, as always. We are live at Zeppo's at Arizona State Week coming up on Saturday.
At Boeing.
The bookie call-in line at 866-COOG-TALK. That's 1-866-268-4825. Now, back to the show.
Got a question here for Coach coming in from Mike. Excuse me. Mike is a great Coug, loyal listener. Back here live at Zeppo's. Great to be with you on a game week. This is a great air raid question, and I've wondered this myself. And maybe it's moot because of adjustments, but Herm Edwards, their base set, their defensive coordinator, Danny Gonzalez, who's in his second year. And this is a little bit of we're going deep into Arizona State here. We usually have the opponent preview segment. We'll do that as well. But the question from Mike is 3-3-5, which means 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 defensive backs, as opposed to the typical 7-man front, meaning 3 down linemen and 4 linebackers, or 4 down linemen and 3 linebackers. There are fewer set up in the box here, the box for Arizona State, more DBs. What's it like going up against a base set that way where they for starters, have 5 DBs out there as opposed to just 4?
It's quite similar because their 5 DBs are all within proximity of the box, to get there. So they're planning to either fire them forward or fire them back, which they do, and then they're trying to foul up your alignment with the 3-3 business, as in, configure and attack your gaps by different angles than it would be with the 3-4, the 4-3. But the back, half the DBs are within proximity to get there quickly. So And then sometimes they'll do stuff that's basically amounts to preset cover 3.
Mike, thank you for that question. Thanks for listening, as always. Do you find also that kind of regardless of whatever their base is, whatever their regular defense is, they eventually, inevitably default back to a lot of DBs because the Cougs lead the nation in passing. So you better have a lot of defensive backs or else, Cougs are going to torch you. Isn't that kind of fair?
I've always thought that whatever defense a team does best is their best defense. Everybody talks about all these changes, adjustments, stuff like that, which there's a certain amount of that for sure, no question. But, the defense that a team does best is almost, even if schematically it's not perfect, I think is generally the best approach to take, to no matter who you're playing.
Mike, thanks for that question again. Michael here in Zeppos wants your opinion of the Devil as a mascot, Sun Devil, Blue Devil, the classic Red Devil, wherever the Red Devil may be. What's your Sun Devil analysis? What do you think?
Well, I think it's great. First of all, I think it's great. Second of all, somebody in this country finds it politically incorrect, I guarantee you, because somebody somewhere is raising hell about it. And I'll tell you what we need to tell whoever that somebody is on behalf of the Sun Devils is that, we'll have whatever mascot we decide, and we'll do whatever we want with it, and we don't care if you're happy or not. And it would be really refreshing if somebody would finally do that, okay? And so then, and not just Daniel Snyder, okay? and then so anyway, but the thing that I think is, and I didn't realize this, heard a backstory on this. What I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, because they asked me all about mascots, and then, what exactly is a Sun Devil, and it's a little vague. It's kind of like if your mascot is, I don't know, Apollo or somebody. Right. I mean, but I heard it was drawn up by a Disney animator, and they also say that he drew it as kind of a caricature or a likeness of Walt Disney. Huh. And I've never thought of that, and I've never heard that, and I don't know if it's true. But I just looking at it, I can't help but wonder. And so that is kind of a fascinating story. There's a hotel that sometimes they'll have the conference meetings at, and the coaches and ADs gathering there in Scottsdale at the Biltmore, and then so that Biltmore Hotel right behind it. Somebody said it's not that big of a mountain. It's like one of those Arizona-looking mountains, and it's not that big of a mountain. But evidently, a bunch of those Hollywood execs way back in the good old days were sitting back there, and they decided that they're going to name their studio Paramount, because I've always thought of the Paramount Mountain as being something out of the Swiss Alps and snow-covered. All those shadows are snow-covered. Well, and then when it was pointed out to me, you look at this hill behind the Arizona Biltmore, which wouldn't take you long to walk to the top of, and you look at it, and you look at the shadows and the little crevices on that hill, that is the Paramount Mountain. Huh. And somebody just flew out there, I guess, sketched it, and became the mascot or the trademark of Paramount. And as soon as you look at it, you know immediately. I looked at it for years before somebody told me, but when they told me, oh yeah, that's it.
You can't miss it.
But there's no snow on it. That's the one thing. Yeah. Then you reconcile. Yeah, it looks exactly like it. And those shadows are shadows on that place, not snow. So
well, I'll be darned. A quick check of the Google machine here, and you never know how much you can trust Wikipedia, because I could go on and edit it right now, so don't hold me to it. But yeah, Disney allegedly, the Sparky was a Disney drawing, and potentially of Walt Disney. Sparky was, but that's kind of loose and just Wikipedia. But there you go. How about that? And that's actually 2 in the Pac-12 then, because the Oregon Duck is also the same deal. So go figure. Well, there you go.
They just copied Donald Duck.
Right, yeah, that's just straight copy.
Yeah, and I don't think Donald would be very impressed with that at all.
Hey, we are, I'm getting word here. We do need to take a break. We're up against it. We'll take it. We're live here at Zeppo's talking football. It's the Cougs coming up against Arizona State.
Time now to look ahead at this week's game with the Coors Light Opponent Preview. Coors Light, the world's most refreshing beer.
Back here live at Zeppo's, we are talking football here. We're talking all kinds of things with Coach Leach. It is that portion of the show where we dive into Arizona State. Now, we've done it a little bit to this point, but we can get a little more specific. And actually, I want to ask you, you've crossed paths with most, maybe all of the Pac-12 head coaches, but I don't know if you know Herm Edwards personally. And, you know, he was for 9 years in Bristol. He coached about 20 years in the NFL. How well do you know Herm Edwards? Have you guys crossed paths before, or is this the first time?
You know, well, it wasn't the first time. I mean, as far as playing each other, this will be the first time. But I would say it's more accurate to say we've shaken hands and we've had very brief conversations. I don't know Herm. I've been in meetings, you know, with Herm where they held us hostage for hours. But like
TV production stuff, more like conference. You know, here's the rules, here's the procedures, here's what we're doing with this, what we're doing with that, and why don't we have a policy? Okay, here's some more policies. Let's look at these, and then some are the right direction, and some I have other thoughts about. But I don't know him well. I mean, I admire his career and everything, and he certainly is had a fine career and just was a kind of an achiever as a player. So, but I don't know him well. He's hilarious to listen to because first thing he thinks of, he says. So I like that. And then. But no, he seems like a nice guy. He does. He seems like a great guy. He has a great reputation. He's got a heck of a staff, too. Not on his coaching staff is a Hall of Fame center, Kevin Mawai, and then former NFL head coach Marvin Lewis, who I guess is a buddy of his. So they have all kinds of experience on that staff, don't they?
Marvin Lewis is on the staff.
Yeah. Marvin Lewis is a special advisor, and Kevin Mawai is he's a football analyst to the degree to which he's involved with stuff. I don't really for sure know, but Mawai is there.
Yeah, I've talked to Marvin Lewis a little bit too. But anyway, they and then of course Jonathan and Jay Hayes both worked for Marvin for a long time, and then I know those guys pretty well. And so then, but anyway, so pretty good staff and they do some good stuff, so we got to go out there and play well.
Hey, speaking of what, unrelated to this, but it comes to mind because I saw him in Houston. Steve Spurrier was in Houston. Steve Spurrier Jr.'s father, the old ball coach, was in Houston. He's been on campus a little bit here and there. How much have you been able to talk ball with Steve Spurrier over the years, or at all? Have you been able to talk to Coach?
Some. He's a fantastic guy, and he's always been very approachable for us. And then, I'll see him at those same meetings, and then or used to more often, but now still see him sometimes. And then, but he does a great job and is a great resource. And he's one of those guys that made it exciting to be a football coach. And so we all wanted to do it, and he's part of the example why.
Yeah, he's all time. Post-game party never stops at Northern Quest. 24/7 gaming, over a dozen restaurants and lounges, luxury rooms, and more. Details at northernquest.com. Need to take a break? We'll do it here. We're live at Zeppo's talking with Coach Leach here before Arizona State.
Hey, I'm Kurt. That's been focused on serving the people and businesses in Washington and all across the country since 1863. That's U.S. Bank, equal housing lender, member FDIC.
We are back here live at Zeppo's. It's great to see everybody. We have just a few minutes left here in this show. How much, especially in this past week, this is a write-in question here for you. I know the answer to it in terms of input on defense because on the podcast with Alex Brink, and Super Dave Emmerich and Jedediah Collins. Super Dave was talking about how this process went, but position changes on defense and how much you spoke with Super Dave and Darcel and Rock. And I think everybody's really curious to know, especially in these last week, 7 to 10 days, what that was like and going into figuring out how to move the battleship forward and everything.
Well, the biggest thing is got a lot of input from the defensive coaches. The defensive coaches talk to each one of them individually to get their thoughts and their best thoughts on moving forward and anything that they felt like was holding us back. And took meticulous notes on it, and then compared them, and then brought everybody in together, and then sorted things. And they all had a lot of good feedback on things that they felt like would improve us. And the most amazing thing of all was when we talked to them, it was it was really congruent to what one another said, in addition to what players felt too. And so I think it was, everything was quite apparent. And then, but then you got to get some of the clutter out of there, as far as whether you're running something that's clutter or communicating something that's clutter, and clarify the message and the approach to things, which I feel like we did.
So thank you for that question, right-in question there, because of always, in every way, in particular the defense this week will be paramount. I want to switch gears a little bit here. Give a shout-out here. Alex Brink's brother, Ben, is tuning into this. Ben Brink, who's obviously a fan of the program, and Alex saw Ben. He lives in Houston, so we had a chance to cross paths with him. Ben was the best swimmer in the country out of high school, went to Tennessee to swim. He was on the Olympic team with Michael Phelps, and Ben swam in competition against Washington State swimming coach Matt Leach, the other Coach Leach here on campus. They actually competed against each other, and so there you go. It kind of all goes full circle. How about that?
Yeah, so me and Alex both have brothers that were great swimmers. How about that?
Is that right? There you go. Yeah, right. That's right. I love it. So shout out to Ben, and hey to Alex, who's also tuning in. And so here we are. I think we do have – we do. We have one break left. We need to take it. We kind of bunched them all up here at the back end of the show. We'll take the break. We'll come back and wrap it up next. We're live here at Zeppo's Talking Ball with Coach. All right, we're back here live at Zeppo's. It is we got about 120 seconds left, so we're going to roll through things here a little bit, talk a little bit more football, and then we'll get to fly to Tempe tomorrow, where allegedly it's like 90, and it's going to be hot during the day there. Good weather to spin the football, but Eno Benjamin, their running back, he's a really good player, isn't he? I mean, he's a special running back that Arizona State has. We haven't talked about him at all.
Yeah, I think he is a good player. Had a good year last year, too.
Yeah, he's actually one of 5 Sun Devils in program history to get to 2,000 career rushing yards. It's only his 3rd season. It's not his 4th season, so he's done it faster than almost every other Sun Devil. He's been really productive, and that's kind of what they do, right, is run the ball, sort of a stereotypical run the ball, don't turn it over, kind of try to hang on to that sucker, don't they?
Yeah, they run it around. The quarterback can kind of keep you honest as far as running around too. And then, the biggest thing is they try to keep the ball. They have a few air raid concepts, but I would say they're more conservative.
Hey, much thanks to everybody here at Zeppos. It's so great to see everybody. Thanks to everybody who tuned in, whether it's on radio or on Twitter and social media. Jared Prengruber does such a good job behind the scenes. Jerry Kylo, as always, gets us on the air. Pat Phelan back in the U.S. Bank Network studios. Thanks so much for tuning in. 10:30 airtime, 12:30 kick in Tempe coming up on Saturday.